Margot for short. This 45-minute forum is sponsored by the Stillwater Gazette and Forest Lake Times. Both of these newspapers are owned by Adams Publishing Group. The newspapers and one of the staff at Adams Publishing Group have helped provide the questions that will be asked during this forum. In alphabetical order, the two candidates running for House District 33B are Republican-endorsed Mark Bischofsky and DFL-endorsed Josiah Hill. Welcome.
Thank you.
The forum format is as follows. Each of you will be allowed a prepared 1-minute opening statement and up to a 1.5-minute closing statement. You'll be asked to respond in up to 2 minutes to my questions. If I see that time is running out, I may adjust that time, but I definitely will let you guys know ahead of time. Hannah Shalene is the timekeeper. She'll hold up cards with the remaining time of 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and stop. When Hannah holds up the stop, please stop mid-sentence. I'm telling you, I've done these forums for years, and I am amazed and appalled at the number of conjunctions some candidates can use that keep going and going and, yes, going. I'm serious. It's unreal. The opening and first question will be done in alphabetical order, and while I realized I didn't have a coin, I don't carry coins anymore, I asked either of the candidates if they minded going, and they said either one, so thank you both for accommodating that. Mark, please begin with your opening statement.
Well, thanks, Margot. Thanks to the Times and the Gazette. I'm the luckiest husband in the world to the most amazing woman in the world. I have 3 little boys at home, and frankly, that's why I'm running for office, to make sure that my boys have a great future. I've been a public servant for 23 years as a respiratory therapist the last over decade in this community. I've been blessed with the opportunity to work with the residents of this district when they were at their most fragile moments, when they couldn't breathe. In fact, when they were on life support. And right now, our state is on life support. It's in critical condition. We are seeing crime like we have never seen before. We are seeing inflation like we have never seen before. And our schools are failing to teach our children academics. And it's unfortunate, but while all these problems are occurring, the DFL and my opponent are campaigning on one single divisive wedge issue. I'm listening to the voters. I'm running to be the independent voice for the voters of District 33B, someone you can count on to be a listener and be your voice.
Yes. I'm going to give Hannah, the timekeeper, permission to just yell stop as I mention these conjunctions and that. Anyhow, Josiah Hill, your opening, please.
Well, thank you, Margot, for hosting, and Hannah for your help with the time, and thank you to the Stillwater Gazette and the Forest Lake Times. I'm Josiah Hill. I grew up here in Stillwater, and I'm so proud to call Stillwater my home. I am raising, along with my wife of 20 years, our 3 young daughters, and much like Mark, they are a large reason of why I'm running. The future is bright in Minnesota, but we have work to do to ensure that it's even brighter. And so I look forward to sharing our positions on the issues of today. I also look forward to showing the contrast between the positions that I hold on these issues and my opponents, and the contrast in how we choose to engage in campaigning as we move forward. I'm looking forward to tonight.
Thank you. And there should be contrast with the questions that are going to be asked. Mark, I'll begin with you. To what degree, if any, should parents have input in their child's K through 12 education?
Oh, that's a big issue for me. Education, every Minnesotan child deserves a quality education. Definitely. I have 3 little boys at home, and we've chosen to homeschool our little boys because we feel the public schools are failing us. And we definitely what we need to see is choice, school choice. Now, 71% of Americans believe we should have school choice. Where there's competition, you're always going to have a better quality product. Our schools are failing us. We've seen decline year after year after year since 2014 in reading, science, and math proficiency, and it's profound. It seems our schools are focusing on a political ideology of hypersexualization and racism, where everything needs to be viewed through a racial prism versus focusing on academics. We need to focus on academics first. I'm running because I believe in school choice. I believe we should fund the student not a system. Absolutely, I'm all for having teachers being paid well, but we need a competitive market where our schools are going to compete with one another to have a better product so that our students are taught academics as the #1 priority. So I'm running so that every child in Minnesota can have a great quality education.
Thank you. Josiah.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. As a longtime public school teacher, I've spent over 20 years serving as a high school English teacher, and so proud to have served almost 20 years of the past 20 years at my alma mater at Stillwater Area High School. And, you know, some of the concerns that Mark talked about I'll address here in a minute, but I think the question has to do with parental choice and parental voice in a child's education. And the great news is, I'm proud to tell you, is that parents have a great deal of choice and voice when it comes to their child's education. The concerns that I've been hearing in the media of late surrounding critical race theory are unfounded. I've never seen that in any of our classrooms, and like I said, I've spent the last 22 years on a daily basis operating in that space. Parents do have choice here in the Valley. There are several both public and private school options, and so that choice exists. But the reason I'm the most proud that I am a public educator is we serve every child, every last child that comes through our doors. And, you know, that's something that I believe strongly in. And as we move forward, we have opportunities to do better by our schools. Since 2003, in inflation-adjusted dollars, our schools have lost, in Stillwater schools, $3,000 of funding each year per pupil. And so as we look ahead, investing in our schools, investing in our kids, who are our most precious natural resource, and I look forward to working towards that.
Thank you, and I'll begin the next question with Josiah. What ideas, if any, do you have to help address inflation?
Right. Well, there's many options on this. The higher costs that we're all experiencing are impacting us all negatively. Our family isn't excited about this or feel good about this, just like our neighbors and our friends and our fellow citizens. And so as we look ahead, we have to make sure that we focus on supporting our businesses through this difficult time. But we also need to find ways to circulate more money in our economies, in our local economies. And, you know, that takes a multi-pronged approach. I remember as a child in the early 80s when we had our last huge spike of inflation that was long-term. And what I remember the approach to solving that being from our federal government was something called trickle-down economics, where money was returned to taxpayers in the highest brackets in corporations. And to be honest with you, Margot, I'm still waiting for that trickle-down to occur. I can remember our downtowns being shuttered and businesses closing left, right, in every direction. And so we can do better with a multi-pronged approach to make sure that our workers and our families and those in need are supported through this. The good news is that we have an opportunity to invest there. We have a historically large surplus, and strategically investing that can help us through this challenging time.
Thank you. Mark.
Well, inflation's the top issue right now at the door of the economies, and something needs to be done about it. You know, Minnesota has the second highest tax rate for businesses, the sixth highest for individuals, and I think we need to cut the taxes, especially right now, so that people can have more money in their budgets to make ends meet. And speaking of the tax surplus, we need to give it back. If someone overpays me, I'm not looking for ways to spend it. The budget year was a year and a half ago. They made the budget. That should be enough. There's $12 billion right now sitting there that needs to go back to the taxpayers so that they can make ends meet. People can't afford to put food on the table. They can't afford to put gas in the tank. The DFL and my opponent wants more government programs, this reckless spending. Programs like Feeding Our Future. These programs sound wonderful, but it's inefficient. We saw $250 million get fleeced from the taxpayers. More government programs, fleecing the pockets of the taxpayers is not what we need. We need to cut taxes. We need to put more money in the budgets of businesses and individuals and families so that they can make ends meet. These are very, very trying times right now. We've never seen inflation like this. And we need to cut taxes. In fact, I would say we need to have the conversation in light of this $12 billion surplus of, could we get rid of the state income tax? Honestly, because our income tax revenue for individuals is about $15 billion, and with $12 billion sitting there, we need to have this conversation so that families can make the decision what they want to do with their money that they have earned.
Thank you. Mark, I'll begin the next question with you. What issues, if any, do you have a different viewpoint on than the party that endorsed you?
I would say first and foremost, I intend to be an independent voice, absolutely. I may be a Republican, but my allegiance is to the people. And I think the first one that comes to mind would be the legalization of recreational marijuana. That's an area where, I don't believe that and my party opposes this, and this is an area where, I don't believe we should be throwing people in cages marijuana's here. Prohibition didn't work for alcohol, it's not working for marijuana. It's legal in most of the states around us, and importantly, our police officers, should they be spending their very valuable time on these nonviolent crimes when violent crimes are skyrocketing, 770 some odd carjackings last year. So that is an area, and I will say on that issue too, that the DFL, I believe they're for the legalization of recreational marijuana, but they've had every opportunity to get this done and legislate on this, but they wouldn't negotiate and wouldn't make compromises, and it's unfortunate because this is one of those issues. It's a wedge issue, and they want it illegal so that they can keep bringing voters back every election cycle. It's politics as usual. You're not going to get that from me. I'm an independent voice. I've already stood up against my party. Again, I pledge allegiance to God, the flag, and to the residents of this district, and I will stand up against my party anytime I will have the courage to do that, and I will reach across the aisle to get the job done any opportunity I have, because I want to get the job done for the voters in this district.
Thank you. Josiah.
Yeah, I think that the issue that I struggle with the most, and I believe that both parties are guilty of this, is the utilization of what's called omnibus bills to legislate. And at the end of our sessions, we see it time and time again that stack after stack of bills and different pieces of legislation get bundled together and forced through on a single vote. And I think our voters deserve more than that, and deserve more transparency, and deserve better. And so that would be the issue. I think for me, as I'm moving around talking to voters on the doors, as I'm talking to colleagues at work or friends at church, the thing that I hear the most, and the message that resounds the most with people that we're campaigning for, is when we talk about in our campaign, in our team, our desire to lower the temperature, to drop the rhetoric, and to find ways to partner and to get things done together. And I think that's one of the main contrasts that I'm noticing between Mr. Bashofsky's campaign and his approach, his utilization of images that somehow paint a picture that I'm sinister or I'm militant is the word that he's used to describe me repeatedly. And I think that's out of step with what voters want in our communities. I think it's inappropriate. I think it's immature. And as we move forward, we're going to talk about what we stand for and what we believe in. And you'll never see our campaign make a personal attack against Mr. Bashofsky. His behavioral choices I will speak to, and I disagree with them. But as we move forward, we'll tell you what we stand for and what we hope to achieve over the next 2 years at the state capitol.
And thank you. I just wanted the audience to be aware that I'm not going to allow rebuttal time in this forum, but they are more than willing, if they want to address anything that their opponent has said either way that they disagree with. So just to keep that in mind. Josiah, I'll begin the next question with you. Should Minnesota join the growing number of states that do not tax Social Security benefits?
This is something that I'm interested in learning more about. I think we have an opportunity. Again, we have a record surplus. We have an opportunity to serve our different citizenry groups who have different needs. And folks on fixed incomes need support and need relief at times. And so this is something that I'd be interested in learning more about. I am initially supportive, but I'd also like to look at the impacts to our revenues and look at new ways to ensure that our state moving forward doesn't have a shortfall based on a decision like that. But yes, I am supportive of that.
Thank you. Mark?
Absolutely. That's the top issue at the door. Again, I'm listening to the voters at the door. We have our constituency is very much of retirement age, many of the residents of this district. And that, when I knock on a door of someone in their 60s, that is the top issue. It's ridiculous that this is double taxed. Why are we doing this? This to me it's a very clear-cut answer. We don't need to be taxing these folks, especially right now. How can this even be a question when we're seeing the costs at the grocery store and at the gas stations like we've never seen before? Inflation is much higher than 8.2%. You look at your typical groceries and your gas, you're looking at 20, 30%. We need to help these folks make ends meet. That is important to me. In fact, that's one of my top issues, as not personally, but I want to be a voice for the people that I'm talking to, and that is a top issue for the residents in this district, absolutely. So we need to stop the taxation of Social Security benefits. We don't need to look at how much more money we can spend. Do we need more revenue? Government should be how much money can we spend. We need to be responsible, and the responsible thing to do is to make sure that these folks, these elderly folks, can make ends meet. So absolutely, I'm running to make sure that people in this district can afford to make ends meet.
Thank you. Mark, with respect to the pandemic and no doubt other future public health events, what factors, if any, should the government consider before enacting statewide measures?
Well, that's very personal to me. Yeah, so these mandates and these lockdowns destroyed this state. I'm a respiratory therapist. I worked through the pandemic. Took those risks. I did it without proper protective equipment. I did it without a vaccine. And then when it was time, when the vaccine came out, I was no longer good enough. So many people came to me crying. I'm the founder of Stop the Mandate in Minnesota. What they have done here, these emergency powers, these draconian measures, hey, they canceled your Thanksgiving. And if you didn't obey, it's the DFL that did this. If they didn't obey, they were going to charge you a $1,000 fine. They systematically destroyed this economy, picking winners and losers. They did this. They actually left the big box stores open and shuttered the small businesses. They did this to this state. This is 100% a liberal policy that we fought against, and nobody would listen. Nobody would listen to this. And look at where we are. And now you can see that the science is out. Trust the science. The science is out that the lockdowns didn't have an effect. You were censored, you were canceled. This is what's happening here. Our First Amendment rights are going away. They're censoring us. They're canceling us. What we saw the last 2 years has changed a lot of people's minds on what the government should and shouldn't be doing. And never again can this happen.
Thank you. Josiah?
Yeah, I have a different perspective on that than Mr. Bashofsky. And, his closing remark that this can never again happen. Your questions about a future health event, a pandemic that may come our way in the near future, in the long-term future. Deciding today, based on past experiences and past challenges, that can never be a pathway is inappropriate. And, my ability to see the future is the same as yours. And so I think that, we would have to take those on one at a time. Our experience, in Mr. Bashofsky's opinion, destroyed Minnesota. We live in a vibrant community, a community that went through a very challenging time, was very challenging for all of us. And we've supported each other through it, and now we're on this side of that pandemic in moving forward. And so as I step to the question like this, could this ever happen again, I think it would be inappropriate for anyone to pretend to know what kind of challenges we could face in the future. Yeah, it was a challenge for everyone in Minnesota, in our country. Minnesota wasn't a unique state in how they approached this and the measures that they took. And so I believe that we would have to take these one at a time to understand exactly what we're dealing with and make the appropriate decisions at that time.
Thank you. Josiah, the U.S. Supreme Court has put abortion law back in the hands of the state legislature. Do you support any specific changes to state law regarding abortion?
I don't, and I support a woman's right to make choices surrounding her own reproductive health care and make those choices in concert with her medical provider. And, you know, as I look at this question and hear the rhetoric out on the campaign trail that's being utilized from some members of the Republican Party, that this is not an issue that's on the ballot, I don't believe that. I believe that there are members of that party who will stop at nothing to remove these rights from women here in our state. And so the question that I have for voters is, how can we trust the Republican Party not to do what they did in 2012 and try to legislate through amendments to our state constitution and finding ways around when the other party holds majorities and gavels at the Capitol. And so this is absolutely on the ballot. It's likely to be on the ballot in all elections that are upcoming. And if you support a woman's right to choose, you and I are in agreement. And that's the stance that we've been very clear about and very consistent with.
Thank you. Mark?
I'm just going to go back to the last question here. So Josiah Hill, when it comes to the pandemic, Josiah Hill did not listen to the parents of this district as the union president when the majority of the parents in this district wanted the masks off the kids and the schools open. Did not listen to the parents in the pocket of the unions, not listening to the voters in this district. When it comes to life, life is precious. There's no question about it. I have 3 little boys, and each day that they were born, the most glorious days of my life, 100%. And having children comes with hardships, challenges, but those hardships and challenges become the greatest rewards you could ever have. You know, and this is where science will back me up. Life begins at conception, and I believe all life needs to be defended, except for when the mother's life is in danger. Now, you know, I'm called extreme over this. They talk about a woman's choice when it comes to medical, but not when it comes to taking a vaccine. That doesn't count. And a woman, the radical left can't even define what a woman is anymore. Also, is it extreme to want to save babies, or is it extreme to picture a 7-pound baby, the 9th month of a term pregnancy, the last minute? Picture that. Is it okay to kill that baby? Abortion on demand for any reason? That is the extreme view. I explained, my almost 11-year-old son asked me a couple weeks ago, "What's abortion, Dad?" And I explained it to him. I said, "Son, it's when a mom and a dad decide they don't want their baby and they terminate it." He couldn't believe it. When you have an unpoliticized mind, untainted, you see the reaction there. It becomes very clear. I challenge anyone to explain that to their child. It becomes clear it's not moral. There's nothing extreme about wanting to save babies. I'm running because I want to protect life. Life is precious.
Thank you. Mark, how can we better address crime?
Oh, this is a big issue. It's right up there with inflation. We need to make criminals pay for their crimes. We need to make them accountable. Absolutely. When I'm out knocking doors, it's a major issue. It's right up there with economy. I talked to a guy, his car was stolen. There's carjackings close to home. You know, it's the number one job of our state government is to protect life, liberty, and property, and they are not doing it. Right now, I mean, we're seeing carjacking 770 carjackings, 100 murders. The crime rate since Walz took office is up 9%. It's a revolving door, catch and release. Works great with bass and walleye or little sunfish. Doesn't work with violent criminals. This cashless bail. Time and time again, I'm hearing of these people that put a gun to someone's head, take their car, and they're let out the door. The they don't seem to want to, the DFL does not seem to want to punish these violent criminals. I'm all for redemption, 100%. But again, if you're going to put a gun to someone's head and take their car, you need to go to prison over this. It's too bad. It's unfortunate that we're having this. I don't want to even go to the Mall of America with my family. I don't want to go to a Twins game at night because of the violent crime we are seeing. And we're seeing this. Here's the irony in this. Some radicals want to defund the police, and I would love to know if you will denounce Ilhan Omar and Ellison for wanting to defund the police and calling the Minneapolis police rotten to the core. We need to respect and support our law enforcement. They have a very hard job to do. Of course, there's some bad cops, but no one hates a bad cop worse than a good cop. We need to support law enforcement. We need to make criminals pay for their crimes. We cannot defund the police and disarm the citizen. That makes no sense. I'm running for office so that our streets can be safe for you and I and for our
Stop.
children.
Thank you. Josiah?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It is an important question. I think it begins with supporting our brave women and men in uniform and investing in ensuring that they have the number of boots on the ground that they need to do their work, and that they have the support, the equipment, and the protections that they need. We had an opportunity to invest in our law enforcement community in the last session, but the Republican Party walked away from a compromise deal that would have done just that, and that's where we need to begin. I agree with Mark. Our violent offenders need to be held accountable, and they do need to have ramifications for their choices and their actions. As far as this idea that the party I'm a part of, or that me personally have ever been interested in defunding the police, is laughable. Our police community needs more resources, and I'm committed to making sure that they get just that. As we move forward, the idea that anyone in our campaign has ever called Mr. Bashofsky extreme is not true. That's not happening. And so as we step forward, that contrast needs to be clear, and I'm committed to finishing this campaign the way we've started and the way that we've conducted ourselves. And so I thank you for the question on crime, and we have work to do to ensure that we solve this challenging issue today.
Thank you, Josiah. What do you think Minnesota's minimum wage should be, and what justifications do you have for that amount?
Yeah, well, we've seen some interesting trends in our economy, especially over the last few years. I can remember being in high school and working for minimum wage, and that allowed me to put a few dollars in my pocket and keep some gas in my tank. And, to think that a figure, an amount like that, I believe it was around $4.75 an hour, that could work today is ludicrous. And so as we look at the concept of minimum wage, it needs to be tied to some indexes like inflation, and it needs to be tied to the cost of living and the increases there. Do I have a certain dollar amount in mind? No, but I do believe that it warrants continued study, and it needs to evolve and change on a regular basis, not every 10 years. And so I can remember being a part of supporting a wage increase on minimum wage up to $9.50, and it feels like a very short time ago, 10 years ago to be exact. And now here we are, where that minimum wage is rising and still not keeping pace with inflation and the challenges that people are facing. We need to do better by our workers and respect them with a livable wage.
Thank you. Mark?
Well, I see right now you can make 20 some odd dollars working at McDonald's. I think the market dictates what someone should get paid. I happen to believe in the free market and its ability to provide the best value, the best price, and I believe that's the same when it comes to employment. Right now, you can make really good money working at Ace Hardware, working at McDonald's. I don't believe the government needs to be dictating what a business owner, private business owner, that use their money to open a business. I don't believe the government needs to be dictating what they have to pay somebody. I believe in the free market.
Thank you. Mark, gridlock is an issue in state government. How will you work to prevent it?
Well, I'm running to be a principled leader and an independent voice, and I believe, most importantly, you need to know who you're working for. You're working for the people. Most importantly here, I believe you have to be willing to stand up against your own party in order to reach across the aisle. It's in healthcare, in fact, when you're in a big hospital organization, you work with a lot of people. A lot of times you have to, there's multiple, perspectives that come into play before you can come to the right conclusion. You're talking with doctors, you're talking with nurses and patients, and sometimes you have to listen first and make compromises to come to the best, to come to the best outcome. And I believe we get through this gridlock by listening to the voters and informing the voters, pulling the curtain back on what's happening at the Capitol so that there's transparency, so that the voters can put pressure on the legislators to do what's right. And again, I have no allegiance to my party. My allegiance is to the people. So if there's something that needs to be done and it's the right thing to do for the people of this district, I have no problem going against my party and teaming with someone across the aisle 100%. It's clear to me that politicians in Minnesota are forced to fall in line with their party on both sides of the aisle. That's not the case with me. I've already had a battle with my own party, had a hard-fought primary, because they know I'm not going to be a hand-picked puppet. I'm in nobody's pocket here. I'm not in the pocket of the biggest political organization in this state, the teachers union. I am 100% funded by the grassroots, and I'm going to be a voice for the people of this district, and I will stand up against my own party, and I will reach out across the aisle anytime.
Stop. Thank you. Josiah.
Yeah, well, I'll start by telling you I know how not to accomplish that, and that is by depicting your political opponents as sinister, as violent. There was an image that was shared with me today from Mr. Bashofsky's campaign that depicted me with a launching missile. That is not how you go about building bridges and connecting. What I believe the way forward is to connect with people in your own party, in any other party, is it begins with listening and working to achieve a very important end for me and for our campaign, which is to change the tone. The approach taken by my opponent is precisely what turns people off to this process, and I think it's dangerous. And so the way to reach out across the aisle is to seek out common ground and to find ways to move forward in service to all of our voters here in Minnesota and all of our citizens, regardless of if they get to the polls. And I do want to take an opportunity to make this point very clear. I want to hear the voices of all Minnesotans. I want all Minnesotans to have access to a polling place so that they can have their voices heard in every election cycle. And when there are those who work to eliminate people's access to voting, you got to question that. And again, that is a strategy that's being utilized that moves us in the precisely opposite direction of working across the aisle to get things done for Minnesotans.
Thank you. Josiah, there's a movement among some states to eliminate the income tax. Should Minnesota be one of them?
I don't believe that this to be true. We have addressed and mentioned the surplus that we are lucky to have here in Minnesota and the opportunities that lends us to strategically invest in ensuring that Minnesota's future is bright and brighter. And so I do not support the elimination of the income tax.
Thank you. Mark.
I just got to make the comment about the missile. The missile was carrying inflation, because inflation is at, really, in our lifetimes, the highest we've ever seen. And I believe, as the voters I'm talking to understand, that this inflation is caused by reckless spending by political operatives who will be in the pockets of special interest groups like teachers unions, who are going to fall in line with their party, who want to raise taxes for more and more government programs that sound pretty, like again, like feeding our future. Doesn't feeding our future sound pretty? It does, but again, we got fleeced, $250 million. So that's what the missile was about. So what was the question again? Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I have a lot of questions in front of me. Oh, goodness.
It was about the income tax.
Oh, the
Yeah,
income
the
tax,
income tax,
absolutely.
right.
That's something we need to talk about. Again, I talked about that. So $12 billion surplus. It's $9 billion if you look at the rainy day fund at $12 billion. Individual income tax revenue in our state's about $15 billion. So we've overpaid almost equivalent. Why can't we have this conversation? You know, there are states in this country that do very, very well without a state income tax. They have roads, they have schools. And again, I believe in putting money in the pockets of individuals so that they can decide what they want to do with their money. So absolutely, this is a conversation we need to have. At least slash the taxes. Again, we're the second highest tax bracket for businesses in the nation, the sixth highest for individuals. We have stagnant population growth. We don't want to punish people with harsh taxes. We need to reward the people of this state for their hard work and their job creation. And again, politics as usual is reckless spending, waste, and fraud, and I'm against that 100%. And I will call it out on either side of the aisle. We need to be prudent with the money we do collect, and I do believe we need to have the conversation of eliminating our state income tax.
Thank you. I'll begin closing statements. Josiah, would you be okay with starting?
I'm happy to do it. Margo, thanks again for the opportunity and for hosting tonight, and to the Gazette and Valley Access and the great crew down here. Really appreciate the work. The contrast is clear. It's on display here at our forum tonight in the answers to just about every question. But it's been on display since this campaign started. And I want to take an opportunity, as we did 2 years ago when my opponent, Karen Housley, and I took time at this forum to educate voters to make sure that they're taking a close look at everything they get in the mail and everything that they get delivered to them of a political nature. Because by law, there has to be a disclaimer on that piece of mail or on that video message, for example, that explains exactly where this is coming from and who is paying for it. And I think it's important for voters to note the contrast, not just in our stances on these important issues and what we stand for, but the tone that we're trying to strike. Our kids are watching, not just the kids in our families, Mr. Bashofsky and I's families, but the kids in our communities. And, you know, as we move forward, I would hope that the voters of District 33B agree that it's time to lower the temperature and to work in service of moving Minnesota forward.
Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, so I'm against politics as usual. At the door, I ask everyone, this is one question I ask everyone, do you trust the government? Do you trust politicians? Do you trust the system? And I get a resounding no at every door, swing voters, Democrats, Republicans. So that's where we can all agree. We need to never forget what the DFL has done to this state. Like I said before, they'll cancel your Thanksgiving. They won't let you have a funeral if they decide not to. They'll not let you visit your loved ones in nursing homes or hospitals. They do what they want. In fact, my opponent's campaign has yard signs all over on public property even after being warned. They do what they want to do. We need to never forget what they have done to this state with this skyrocketing inflation, the crime through the roof, and again, our schools failing to teach our children. And Josiah Hill he's a lot of responsibility here, not listening to the parents, keeping the schools closed longer, decline, depression through the roof. We need change. And what we need more than anything is no more politicians. We need somebody who's going to be a voice for the people, an independent voice for the people, who's going to stand up for you, who's not going to have allegiance to a teachers union or to party. I have allegiance to the people, and I will be your voice, your independent voice, to move this state forward and heal the wounds that have been inflicted upon us.
Thank you. And I don't think I've ever said this before in a forum over my 28 years, but unbelievable, okay, to get the contrast. It was strong and it was evident, and I encourage both of you to share it with supporters, viewers, definitely share it with your friends and family. The link will go on through up till Election Day. So it was really very, very enlightening from both of you, so thank you both.
A pleasure.
Thanks, Margot.
A pleasure,
Yeah.
thank you.
Your responses will be written up by Andrea Linder, the managing editor of the Stillwater Gazette. It'll appear in October 21's issue. She'll also share it with managing editor Hannah Davis of the Forest Lake Times. Thanks to Greg and Jordan and the Andrews, the dedicated staff of Valley Access Channels. Thanks to Hannah Shalene, our timekeeper, Stu Grosskreitz, my great organizer from the Stillwater Gazette. Remember, you can vote now, absentee, or in person November 8th. Thank you for watching, and please let others know about this forum.